Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 28 of my Pyanodons playthrough. In this episode, we finally put everything together and start making intermetallics. Enjoy. And where in the world do we want to do this? First of all, I'm kind of thinking I want to crank up the duralumin a little higher. So we'll come in here and say that is an intermediate resource we want a lot of. That will maximize the aluminum plates at 15, and the reason why I'm fine with that is that we are very close to having better aluminum processing, and making 15 a second won't be that difficult. That said, I don't terribly mind sending 15 aluminum plates across the factory, but nonetheless, we want to try to minimize what's being shipped. I don't really care so much about how many items are being sent, as in like the variety of items, so nickel plates being 1.5, I think is more substantial than the fact that it's one more item, like nickel plates. Whereas something that's big, like aluminum, I think is very relevant, even though it's only one item. And our aluminum ore is over here. And right now, our processing is happening next to our patch here. But it's going to be drained really fast. Like basically every time we use any aluminum, it appears on our list of ores that are about to run out. So it's at 50% right now. When we build our better aluminum processing, it doesn't really make much sense to put it here because this patch is going to be temporary. It makes a lot more sense to put it up here where the actual new aluminum patch will be. So out of all of the items, aluminum would be sent in the greatest quantities. So that is the first hint of the place that we should do this. I don't like that there's all of these coal belts that are getting in the way, but really these belts are actually quite temporary, to be honest, that once we get oil burners, these power plants are going to be substantially more effective. Looks like we're actually starting to run out of hot air here. I mean, we could create logic to just dump the coke oven gas, so we probably should, but basically I'm saying that these belts are temporary and we could use them for other things. And this is actually a very dense location for ores, where we've got our nickel, we've got lead, we've got iron. We don't need tin, but it's there. And of course we would have the aluminum. And the positioning also matters because we want this furnace stack to be able to expand. And remember that our smelters are this big. They're huge buildings, so just 2 of them is that tall. And looking at this, some of these are going to need 15 of them. So it's going to go way up. So doing it somewhere around here seems to make a lot of sense. I don't like the idea of crowding this tin ore, but when we get better processing, we'll probably just point this a different direction anyway. So I like the idea of doing our smelting right here. We did need to check up on this hot air. We took the vent out, but we kind of want it to be back in here. So if hot air is critically low, it'll turn on. Although it also is not necessarily critically low, but the tank being basically full. So we need to create an and condition with 2 pumps. So hot air has to be low and coke oven gas has to be high. So there we go. It got coke oven gas to 90%, and that leaves room for all of this to run. Okay, we've got all of the resources here in the general area for our smelter build. The belts are organized in a way that is necessary for maximum production, although our factory can't produce it at this rate. So for example, we have a full belt of the aluminum, but nothing was actually done to increase output. It was just put on both sides of the belt. And we might as well start with the duralumin because that goes into other things we need. And we probably do actually want to have some bus lines here. So let's grab some iron oxide tiles. And do we do 15 in a row? That seems like it's going to be extremely long. Or do we do side by side? Well, side by side doesn't work all that well when you don't have long-handed inserters. Nonetheless, let's try to make it work. And this thing is so big we kind of need to have lights on both sides, and hopefully that's enough. But something like this, can it repeat? Looks like it. So that's 4, 8, and I guess we'll do 16 since that's an even number. And there we go. You can kind of see why I wanted to make so much fuel. It's because of this. I knew we would have an absolute insane amount of smelters to produce things at the maximum rate of our factory, and we would need all of that fuel to keep them going. So in goes the fuel. Then we have these splitters to get copper and aluminum. This is the only use of aluminum on this smelter build, but nonetheless, we can keep the aluminum on the end here just in case there's some other use for it in the future. So in it goes. And this is going to be a whole lot of duralumin, about 4. And then we have another belt here that we can use. We might as well put it on half of a belt so it's not too many resources in a buffer. But yep, this is going to consume untold amounts of fuel. Look at all of that. It's not even made it to the back yet. And our fuel setup, well, we have run through all of the junk fuels and now we are stuck on kerosene, which we do have a ton of, and of course eventually it's going to run out, and then we'll be on coke oven gas, and if it's not enough, it's not enough. And it looks like we have caught up on syngas, and the logic has turned off our coke burners, so it looks like all of that worked as intended. We will eventually need to send these resources around the factory, but for now we can keep them on our little bus here until we've got them all taken care of. What next? Well, let's do the other thing that doesn't go into anything, the lead antimony alloy. And the build concept is essentially the same. 2 input resources on the outside and 1 output in the middle. And 12.5 is slightly less than what we're planning on, but I really don't want to do 14. Give it some spaces. Honestly, these buildings are so big, we might want to give it the maximum amount of spaces that the wire reach will allow. There we go. Okay, let's see if this gets it sorted correctly. Where we've got to get the lead and the antimony oxide onto the belt. And yeah, seems to work. And the output will go on that belt. So let's make some lead antimony alloy. A lot of lead, a little bit of antimony. But there we go. No achievement. And yeah, like before, I'll just keep the resources going even if they're not needed for anything, because we don't know what we might want to do with it next. Our aluminum has slowed to a trickle, but what can you do? Well, the line continues. Those were the 2 unrelated things. Now we need to work on what we actually need for intermetallics. Let's do the big one first. The iron nextlet antimony special alloy. This one does have 3 inputs though, which makes it a little more complicated. Something like this. So 4, 6, 8, and 10. In goes the fuel, and then down the center, the nextlet and the iron, and on the outsides, the near side belt will have the antimony oxide, and then the far side of the belt will skip over it and have our output. And there we go. No achievement for that either. I guess this is fairly routine at this point. And the outputs will go down onto half of this belt here. This last build, we only need 5 machines. And that would be pretty reasonable just to go in a straight line, because we are starting to get close to these patches here and we wouldn't want to go over them if we can avoid it. And this building has a massive 5 inputs. The actual rate of everything is rather small, so we just need to have something go in there to let it get both sides, and the output will be like the other one where it jumps through there. Looks like nextlet is starting to get low, so we should probably see if we have any more Digosauruses we can place down. And yeah, we've definitely got a lot of meat, but we're actually almost completely full on guts. But we'll just let it keep going. Well, we've got a few more Digosauruses, so let's see what it's like at 60% capacity. Well, that is quite noisy and quite busy. It's honestly pretty cool. And let's see if this gets it sorted properly. Seems to. So here we go. Time for some vitrolloy. And it's going. It's pretty interesting in that it looks a lot different, whereas the other resources are kind of plates or ingots. The vitrolloy kind of just looks like a rock. But there we go. We have done all of the smelting that we need to in order to get intermetallics. And let's do these side by side, because 15 in a row seems like an awful lot. And I guess we'll do 16 to have a nice even number. And luckily we already have the 2 resources we need sorted onto one belt. So in it goes. And we probably do want to output these intermetallics onto a belt. And here we go. This will absolutely be an achievement. And there it is. As far as ingots go, it does look pretty cool. And now we're going to consume a massive amount of resources as this whole chain gets started. Power output, it's actually more than I was expecting, considering our situation, but I guess a lot of it is just electrolyzers. But it's pretty good, I think. It looks like all of the parts of this setup are working correctly. It's nice when everything goes according to plan. The output of coke is a little slow, so I guess we are using all of our output here. And yeah, pretty much. I mean, we could definitely put more coke in here if we need to. Well, that might explain it though. We are burning coke away. I guess because the syngas is low, so yeah, we definitely need logic in here. So this isn't necessarily foolproof. So we're just going to have to manually block it off for now. That said, circuits aren't that far in the future. There's definitely some stuff we still need to do to get there, but it's within reaching distance. For now, we're just going to have to play it by ear. I don't mind doing manual control of things from time to time. I just don't want to do it every few minutes like we essentially were with all of our fluids, where it seemed like every 5 minutes one of the fluids was low and the other fluid was high and we had to keep switching it around, and now it is automatically controlled. That makes it a lot easier, but burning coke away seems like something that would happen a lot less often, so I am fine with manually controlling it. There's a couple of things that are immediately useful. One would be the heavy armor. Now that we have intermetallics, it just kind of requires that and a combination of things. The weird aspect of it is that it needs a couple of latex slabs, which is an intermediate, but we could do that. And like the light armor, it gives us another 20 inventory size bonus. So that's good. I've talked about it a few times now, but let's go straight into oil industry machinery. The big thing that we're here for is the oil burner. Better than steam boilers, burns any flammable fluid. Indeed. So it is essentially a 15 megawatt building, and it actually has 200% efficiency, so it actually creates about 30 megawatts of power. And it is 250 degree steam, so otherwise there's nothing special about it. And we're starting to get to the point where these buildings are requiring other buildings. Like this will require a lab and a gasifier to go into it. In addition to, of course, intermetallics, which now pretty much every building's going to need. It's not super expensive, but you know, it's still about a 500 plate building. And now we're at the point where Pi is going to start throwing us a bunch of buildings that don't really have a use right now. We've got the heavy oil refinery, process heavy oil products into different ones. All things considered, it's fairly cheap. Pretty much all the buildings are 500 plates now. And then we have the ionic upgrader, upgrade very heavy petroleum products into lighter ones. And a reformer has to go into that one. And then we have the multi-purpose cracker, able to make steam and hydrocracking of several fluids. And the gas refinery, process gas into different products. And that requires a tar processing unit and a washer. And of course, other things. So we'll do that. And I guess to start with, let's just pick these items up directly off of the belt. It's probably going to be delivered by caravan at some point, but we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. So for now, we can just hold on to a couple of stacks. There was something that we planned a little while ago, and we were frustratingly not able to do it, and that is doing compost. But now we can make the building. Looking at our composting plan, originally we were expecting to compost the jerky, but based on our needs with the caravans, especially with all of the Digosauruses mining next to it, we're probably not actually going to be composting any jerky now. That it looks like chitin is the one thing we're going to need to, and that can be done in one plant. So we'll make it. And at some point we're going to need to hook up the various resources to our minibus here, like the duralumin for example, but we're so short on aluminum right now, I kind of don't want to bother. This isn't too important. We don't have to be very careful about this. This is just kind of a temporary thing. And as you can see, this is an absolutely enormous building. It is gigantic, but it's automated. It reminds me a lot of IR3 with how pretty much all of their buildings work, where you don't actually have to select an ingredient, it just does it for you. And it takes both fluids and solids. So just put in what you want to get rid of and it'll do it. Inserting or taking off of the back of the building is probably a bad idea because we can't see anything, but right now we really only need to have one inserter. This should be good. But in it goes. Processing it away. and it very well might overload, and it looks like it's going to. Honestly, I'm not too concerned. This is processing it much faster than we're making it, so it will get rid of it eventually. Okay, we can't do our heavy armor, so we're going to need 4 latex slabs, and it does not require the light armor to go into it. And latex slabs were part of our process of making stoppers. So we could just kind of come in here, and luckily the insertion limit was 4, so that's what we need. And I don't remember if I pointed it out, but there is actually an equipment grid on the armor, even though we can't put any equipment in it yet. We have a 4x6, and the next one is going to be a 6x8. And there it is. Still can't put anything in it, but we have an extra 20 slots, and that is very nice. Let's see if we have any uses for our light armor. And this is a good example of something that potentially is a dead end, because the only thing the light armor goes into is the car, and the car goes into nothing. So this is an example of a dead end item that does nothing for us, which means we can incinerate it away. So let's set it up somewhere. I'm not too worried about the throughput here, and currently this belt clearly is handling ash because there's little bits of ash on there. Why don't we just integrate it right here? And it is kind of a tall building, so you won't be able to see the inserter if it's right there. So let's do the corner. In goes the coke, and it will not try to incinerate the coke, luckily. And the way I would handle this is just have your junk chest there, and put whatever you want in the junk chest. So in goes the light armor, and wow, that annihilated it. But it's gone now. Okay, let's do some of these new buildings. We want the oil burner, the ionic upgrader, and of course that's an achievement, and I believe that. The heavy oil refinery, the gas refinery, and the multi-purpose cracker. So putting these other Pi buildings into the building requirements does make them more expensive, but also I think it's really good game design, because what happens if you, say, accidentally built 100 washers, and now you just have to wait to find something to put them in? Well, here, because old buildings go into new ones, you might actually have an opportunity to get rid of old junk buildings if you just hold on to them. So I like how that works. All right, let's place the buildings down, and we'll see how big they are. So there's the multi-purpose cracker. It's got lots of pipes on it, and it can do nothing. We can only set parameters on it. The heavy oil refinery is gigantic. It's another one of those kind of both flat and tall looking buildings, and that has no recipes. The ionic upgrader, which this one's a strange one. It looks weird. Not in a bad way, it's just I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. And just parameters. So you can see what I'm talking about with Pi just dropping a bunch of buildings on you. And then the gas refinery, it's kind of hard to see there, but it's kind of raised up. It looks a little weird. And this one we can use. That part of the biomass reprocessing technology we researched also had these recipes that we couldn't previously do. Not that we would anyway, because we can just burn the biomass, but we could use that to turn it into flue gas if we wanted. And finally, the important building, the oil burner. Pretty interesting. It also kind of looks like it's on a platform, but it just has fuel input on one side, steam output on the other, and it shares its water pipes, pretty much like solid boilers do. So the fact that we can burn any liquid fuel will dramatically change our factory. Specifically, it means that this power plant can now operate at its full potential, and every other form of power plant is now outdated compared to it, because this plant can create several different things in pretty much unlimited quantities. It can make coke if we need it. It can make coke oven gas if we need it. It of course makes hot air as a byproduct. It could turn all of these things into steam if we need it, and it can turn that steam into electricity if we need it. So this is an incredibly powerful set of machines to just build as many as you need to. And it's actually very efficient for its power input. So coming back here, we are now going to be boiling the coke oven gas. So the way that you set this up is you come in and say you want steam, and then put it on the bottom. And it looks weird because it's the boiler, but you actually need to come in here and then select the oil burner. And then when you do, you can select the liquid that it burns. And when we do that, it is now generating the steam, and we can push that down. So one of these power plants is going to produce roughly 225 megajoules at the cost of about 60. So it's around 165 megajoules of power output for 5 input belts. And that's substantially better than these builds, which for 2 input belts gives us 45 with the cost of 12. And we can even normalize these by coming in here and setting it to the same input of 18.8. And I guess it was 7.5 to make the numbers exact, that it has the output of 112 at the cost of 30. So it has a net power output of around 82 or so. 82 is substantially lower than this build here. So there's really no reason to build power plants like this anymore. We still may want to leave them in the factory because they are capable of burning byproducts. And how's this going? Well, it's going. It's uneventful, but it's working hard. Burning byproducts is actually an important function of this because you can see that a whole lot of treated wood is coming in and a whole lot of coal dust is coming in. So we're still going to need some amount of these plants just to handle these byproducts. But at least for now, we can start shutting down coal delivery. And we did just place all these belts, but we kind of needed to for power. But I am eager to start getting rid of them. Some of them still may stay because that is where the power plants are. And we put them there so they would quickly drain the starting coal patch. However, the next coal patch is all the way out here. So we'll have to see how this works. But for now, and I kind of want to do remote view so I could just come in here and turn all these sideways. Wow. That actually visually shows you our coal consumption. It's actually a lot. But I don't think this is going to destroy our power network. It very well might. Of course, we could just hook them up again. But it's time to start transitioning into burning this coke oven gas here. We're going to have to be careful with how we handle the pipes. We're definitely going to change these power plants to basically always run, because right now they're only running to fill up the coke oven gas. But now they're basically going to run all of the time as required for both our steam and our electricity needs. And also our coke oven gas needs. And we're just assuming that the hot air is always going to be sufficient. So we need to figure out how many burners we actually need. And looking at it, it's a little bit more than 10. So we need 11. And then a whole bunch of steam engines. And I'm actually only going to do 10 because this assumes that 100% of the power is being burned, but some of it is always going to be used as coke oven gas, so I'm actually fine if it's not completely maxed out, because we actually need slightly more boilers than we have as well, and yeah, that'll be fine. 60 and 10 is such a clean number, but we're gonna have to be careful with the priority of things to make sure that it runs correctly. These are actually really expensive buildings, like just a straight up 100 iron plates is no joke to make one of them. And wow, super short on all iron things right now. And I guess we did already have some steam engines here, which we can pull up, because there is not enough room for steam engines here for all that we need. So originally it was built like this because this cliff was in the way, but actually we could just stick it out the back and it's not going to impact until maybe up here. Well, since the restriction is over here, let's do it over here with a little bit of space. And the length of the pipe sounds good. And it's going to be kind of hard to see, but the pipe will be in the middle. We need to give it priority over the steam that is in these pipes. And we should choose which of the two outputs gets priority. Since we're generating way more power from the coke oven gas compared to the coke, I kind of want to let the coke just be burned away, so the idle state of the factory will look like this, where there's no coke in any of the belts. That means that the steam from these boilers will go all of the time, and the steam from the oil burners will only sometimes be allowed to go. Okay, we'll connect it here, and I like to try to put the valves right next to the supplying devices so it makes the most sense. And we'll do an underflow and say it will try to fill it up to halfway, and then it stops. And we almost certainly don't need to have this vent here anymore. So I kind of want to move it out of the way and leave the logic in place and just see if we actually do need that vent. And let's do an overflow, and if it gets above 90%, it can go into the burners. And technically both sides are connected. We'll need to do a second build of these for the other plant, but we'll at least see how it works. So there's the 90, and they're going. They have a cool look to them. It reminds me of old car cigarette lighters with that ring pattern, but they're going, just consuming their 15 a second and filling up on steam. And of course we can't use the steam, so it's immediately done. The other aspect of this is all of the engines. And where do we want to put those? Something like that should be our repeatable pattern to give us full coverage. And what is this going to look like? Is this going to be enough? Because 60 engines is a lot. It should be that. That shows you the amount of power this is going to make, and that's one of these power plants. Looks like they are overlapping a tad. So if we do that, we can get rid of the last few rows. Looks like most of that coal has disappeared, and our factory is holding out because our power demand comes in very large bursts. Okay, I didn't want to put 2 valves in here, but it would make this a lot simpler if we did. I'm mainly worrying about UPS, that I wonder if you have more valves, if that affects UPS more. It probably does. It's also one less thing to actually have to change. But I suppose we can just make the pipe go around the backside so it all goes through. And then this steam will be allowed to run as much as it needs to. And there we go. We don't necessarily need to have any priority between steam used for electricity and steam used in our factory. In the end, it's all kind of the same thing. And we can change this valve here a little bit, where we basically always want to let it out, but we don't want to max out the pipe. So we'll read it and just say if steam is below 90%. The reason why I'm doing that is a underflow valve will only fill it up if the input level is that high. So if I set this to 90%, then if the level is only 50%, it'll only go up to 50%. It won't actually fill it to 90. So by putting a pump in here, we make sure that this stays at a high level. But yeah, that's a visual representation of how much power is in here. It's a lot, and that's one power plant, so we need to do this a second time. And there we go. Looking good. Lots of temperature mixing is happening. It's actually close to the 250 degrees that it started as. I'm guessing we're going to need a third plant if we do indeed pull out every one of these power plants, and honestly we probably do want to. But at least we've got all these steam engines we can use. I'm very happy that our power production has finally leveled up, because prior to this point, all of our power options were honestly kind of bad. It was basically just more raw coal, but finally we have access to something that is legitimately good. We have this belt here as backup steam, but I don't think we actually need it anymore because this setup is perfectly capable of making steam on demand now. So many functions of our factory are going to be handled by this that we can basically shut everything down. So to do that, let's just remove the valve and just let it consume all the coal. And we do have 2 belts coming in here, which would be nice to save for other things because we're eventually going to lose output. And you can see here we already are. So it'll be nice to have a couple of belts in reserve. And somebody ran out of food. That's interesting. What happened here? Ah, that's the one that was delivering junk ores. And I guess we've gone without food so long that he just was not able to pick up any. That is unfortunate. Good thing we have the indicator for it. We do have food in the factory. It's just not on the stop that he goes to, which is okay. And oh wow, that's actually kind of running out too. So I say we have food, but we actually kind of don't. I'm glad we started up that rock production and just threw away the formic acid because we're actually reasonably low on caravan food here. And since we're thinking about it, let's go down there and see how our production of Digosauruses is going. We've got 6 more, so we're getting pretty close. I think we only need 7 more. And we've got 1 in production, so we need 6 of them worth of petri dishes, which is 60. And I think we actually do have that. It should produce all of them that we need. So another 2 machines worth of Digosauruses, and I guess there was already food in that one. But yeah, looking good. Lots of busy creatures working for our amusement. And there we go. The power plants have been upgraded. It was a small addition, but oh man, the power output is incredible now. And it looks like these are basically providing power for the whole factory. It's hard to say how much we're going to need. I do think we're going to need a third plant, but for now, how about let's just wait and see if we start running into power problems. One side effect of doing this is previously, especially if you look over the 10-hour mark, that electric mining drills were essentially our biggest energy consumer, except for when electrolyzers spiked. So if we take them out, that kind of shows. what's going on here. But now I think that we have more efficient energy production. The electric miners are actually going to kind of disappear because most of what the miners are doing was making coal. So since we're getting a lot more energy out of coal, they are going to become more balanced. So when we were putting a bunch of miners in the factory, I was doing so with the understanding that at some point in the future they wouldn't be so bad. And now it kind of makes sense that the high pressure furnaces are starting to come up because those are a major part of this power plant. So of course they're going to show up. But that means that we can probably remove a whole bunch of this stuff. Oh, we lost a mine here. That sounds like that's going to take a lot of time, so I can do that off screen. It's just going to be pulling up a bunch of belts and whatnot. This does give us something else that we can do, and that is get rid of all these tailings ponds. Our system of using them as fuel has worked pretty well, so if you didn't do something like this, the oil burners will be massively useful because then you can just burn the products away. But we would much prefer to actually use it as a fluid if possible because we still have a lot of fluid burners. So I don't necessarily want to put the fluid burners in here as a backup because actually there's a large buffer in these. For it to actually be clogged, this outpost would have to be full, which is 40k. This one would have to be full, and the caravan would have to be full. So that's 120k, not to mention the actual storage tank that holds the liquids would also have to be full. And we would be using the 80k. So we would essentially have to have 200,000 fluid in backup to have a problem. And if we get to that point, sure, we can put some fluid burners in, but you can kind of understand that I don't really want to because, well, one, they do take up space. So if we had a set of burners for every single build, that would be a lot. But also, it's not as simple as turn the steam into electricity because we couldn't give them priority over other methods. But this does mean that we absolutely can pull out these big tailing ponds and put tanks in their place. And we'll put our signal in here to read the level. So this is the kerosene tank. This tank can be critically high, but not critically low. So we'll just hook it in there. And of course it's empty. And actually while we're here, let's grab this 10k tank. I have something we can do with it. So there's the condensates tank. It is of course also empty. It's nice seeing all this stuff get closed top tanks, because these open tailings ponds are admittingly very low tech. So it is fantastic to get rid of them. Now we don't actually have to worry about things potentially spilling over if we stop paying attention to it for a while. We do want to hold on to the aromatics because we do need it for plastics and things. So we want the high and the low levels. Well, this seems like a good opportunity to audit our factory for things we are venting that we don't want to. And looking to see what we have. Well, it's that pipe there. We were checking to see if this worked, and so far it seems to. We might want to leave that there for now in case we change our mind, but flue gas, hydrogen we could burn. And of course we're getting rid of the rock blood there, and we very well might not need that anymore. But we should probably still leave it there just in case. So yeah, it looks like we can burn up some hydrogen. And to figure out how much we need to get rid of, let's figure out how much we're making. All of that would be 360. All of this is 380. So let's make a new build. It's pretty simple. We just want to make steam and say hydrogen, an input of 400. And you can use this to figure out how many burners you would need. The fluid consumption of the burner depends on how bad the fuel is. So when it's really bad like this, it can go through a huge amount of it and basically need very few oil burners to do it. We probably should combine these hydrogen pipes because we're not that far away from actually using it for things. So let's find a new slot to use. It seems like it's this next one right here. Now with lots and lots of colors everywhere. Okay, no more vent. And I figured we could use this super tall water tower looking tank for this. The capacity is very small, but that's okay. I was looking for an excuse to use the tank. This tank can be critically high, but not critically low. And there we go, rapidly boiling away the hydrogen. Consumption rate 140 feet per second. So doing this would send it to where it needs to go. And give it the correct priority. And this is still working hard. It's maxed out on biomass now, and I do kind of want to just see this thing clear out completely, so let's put another inserter in here that we can't see. Oop, and another one of these mines is gone. We are actually producing it pretty fast. If we lose one more mine, we're probably going to have to redo this and max out this patch, because it's, you know, definitely not doing that right now. Let's do one additional audit, checking for sinkholes. We've got muddy sludge, which we're actually empty on right now because we're just not making that much concrete. Same and same. So we are not wasting anything unnecessarily in the factory. But you can kind of see that the coke oven gas is not always maxed out, because that kind of depends on what we're using and when. So if this goes down to 0, then that essentially means we need another plant. And that's actually a good way of looking at it, that if this does get to 0, then we've got problems. But otherwise, it's pretty good. This is all running nicely. I am pleasantly surprised that there were no major disasters, that everything went according to the plan, and I suppose that is a good advertisement to why you make plans and why you stick with them. So there are no surprises. And yep, we are maxed out on guts and things, so let's remove the exhaust pipe and just let this deteriorate. About another hour and 15 minutes left. Okay then, we're doing fantastic. Of course, we're still short on iron, but we can do some more research. And certainly there is research to help us with our iron problem. However, that's going to have to wait till the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.